Well, today we're going to start a new chapter in Luke, Luke 18. But before we do that, it is still connected to Luke 17. Remember when Luke wrote this, he didn't have chapter and verse headings. It was all one document.
Mhm.
And where we left off last time was this warning of Christ to his disciples, where he says, "The days are coming when you will desire to see one of the days of the Son of Man, and you will not see it." And we talked about the days of the Son of Man, those days when he comes in judgment and to put an end to the oppressors of his people. There's the final day of the Son of Man, when he returns, which we are waiting for. But before that day, there are other days where they're more localized moments. And he speaks to his disciples, you're going to experience that. And they did. If you remember, they were being persecuted by the Romans, but also by the Jews in Jerusalem. And you're going to long to see the Son come and put an end to this, and sort of an apocalyptic moment. And he gives them some instructions upon that. Um,
Mm.
and so that's what we kind of left off with. And he just reminds them of what's coming, and we different interpretations of this. But in any case, it is speaking to a time, an apocalyptic time, when there's going to be intense suffering and tribulation, and you're going to be praying for there to be justice. And I really think that today, like in Iran right now, is might certainly qualify as a days of the Son of Man, one of those days when the innocent, when the people, especially believers, are being persecuted, are being put to death, being oppressed by this wicked regime, and you praying for deliverance. And it's going to take a supernatural, an outside force coming in to put an end to that. And I hope that that's what's happening right now. We'll see. But there's going to be prayers for justice, prayers for the wicked to be exposed and to be defeated, and for the righteous to be delivered and set free. And so that's kind of where we left it off last time. And Luke 18 really carries on the theme, because now it's going to be, he's going to give a parable on prayer. And I am convinced that this kind of prayer specifically is related to what we've just been seeing, regarding praying for justice, praying for the deliverance of God's people and the elect. This is not talking necessarily about any kind of prayer, although it certainly can be applied, but specifically it's applied to praying for justice, praying for um, the right, the wrongs to be made right, for deliverance for God's people. So let's look at this parable and then see what we can discern from it. Rob, you want to read that for us here? This is Luke 18, 1 to 8.
Okay. And he told them a parable to the effect that they ought always to pray and not lose heart. He said, in a certain city, there was a judge who neither feared God nor respected man. And there was a widow in that city who kept coming to him and saying, give me justice against my adversary. For a while he refused, but afterward he said to himself, though I neither fear God nor respect man, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will give her justice so that she will not beat me down by her continual coming. And the Lord said, hear what the unrighteous judge says. And will not God give justice to his elect who cry to him day and night? Will he delay long over them? I tell you, he will give justice to them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?
Okay. All right. So we start with this parable. It starts. This is interesting. This parable is a little different because it begins with Luke telling us the point of the parable. What's the lesson to be learned from this parable? Before he even tells us the parable, he tells us what the point is. And what's the point
I
of
think
this
it's
parable?
not to lose heart that God is going to avenge for you.
Yeah, so it's basically, it's the point of the parable is um, always to pray and not lose heart.
Mm.
Because isn't that a concern with prayer? We get discouraged
Mhm.
if we're not seeing the answer. And again, the things that you'll notice what the widow is crying for and what he says they're praying for is justice. Justice.
Mm.
This is not prayers for stuff, even for prayers for healings, though those are certainly things we can pray for. But the specific kind of prayers addressed in this is one for justice, for just cause.
When I was reading this, I was thinking, what would be the effect on us if God always responded instantly to a prayer?
Yeah.
What would be the effect? Would strengthen faith or weaken faith? I think it would
That's a good
weaken.
question.
I think it would weaken faith.
Mhm.
If he's just a cosmic Santa Claus, as R.C. would say, and you get everything immediately, what's the point of believing and growing faith? Just make a request.
That's true.
It's
That's
yours.
very true.
Rub the genie lamp.
Yeah. And then when you don't get it right, when the day comes when you don't get it right away, you lose heart, you give up. I remember, this is where, of all the sports for kids to learn, I think baseball is the perfect sport for kids because it teaches endurance, and you fail most of the time when you play baseball. Most of the time you get up there, you don't get a hit. Most of the time you don't have success, and you just have to persevere. I mean, the best hitters ever hit the ball 30% of the time. That's considered a Hall of Fame hitter. So 70% of the time, the best hitters don't fail. They fail. And so I remember when Daniel was on a team, the first team he was on, they had this kid. He was a superstar on the mound. He was only about 10 years old, but he was like twice the size of the other kids, and he could throw the ball hard, and he was striking everybody out and just dominated the game. And then a couple years later, I bumped into his dad. I said, "Oh, is he still playing?" He said, "No, he quit. He quit." He says, because what happened was, as he got older, the kids grew up and started to match him, and it didn't come easy for him anymore. And it was hard, and it was like, it's not fun anymore now. So we're done. We're moving on. So long as it was easy, he loved it. But once it got a little hard, and they were able to challenge him, then he moved on to another sport. And thankfully, that wasn't the case for his grades. He was a great student, but that really is. It's like we need to persevere and to not lose heart, especially in times like he's talking about, that when you're going to long to see the days of the Son of Man, you're going to long for his coming. We don't long to see the days of the Son of Man when everything's fine and peaceful and everything's good. We long when we're oppressed, when we're having to hide in the catacombs for our worship services, when our families are being taken from us and we're suffering greatly. Now we're praying. Now we're longing for that. And so when you pray, don't lose heart. Don't think that God is not hearing you. And he tells them a parable. And this is a really interesting parable. We know it as the parable of the persistent widow. However, the focus is not on the widow so much as, and let's add one more person to it, and the unrighteous judge. There's the only two characters in it. And the lesson is what's the effect is happening on this unrighteous judge. So what's the story here? Let's start with the first scene here. Usually these parables kind of break down into a few different scenes with a little bit of a setup and then a surprising application. So what's the setup for this parable?
There was a judge that neither feared God nor respected man.
Okay. So the judge neither fears God nor respects man. What do you
He's
think
a
about
slug.
What's that?
He's a slug.
He's terrible, right? Totally self-centered. There's nothing, in other words, there are no external motivations for him, or internal, and no motivations for him to do right, to do what's right. He doesn't care about what God thinks, and he doesn't care about what men think of him. He's always going to do what's easy, what he wants. This, by the way, is a great lesson for dealing with government in any situation. There's no motivation for government to serve you. So it's like you go to a restaurant and they know that if we don't do a good job, you're not going to come back. They're motivated to serve you because otherwise they go out of business. The government does not fear going out of business. So therefore, they do not care whether you have a pleasant experience at the DMV or not. It doesn't matter because where else are you going to go? There's no place else to go. And so this judge is, I guess, kind of like the DMV, so but doesn't care, no motivation to do his job, no fear of God, no respecter of men. Then we're told about a widow. Tell me about the widow.
She's persistent. She keeps coming back with a complaint.
Yeah, what is she complaining about?
A lack of justice. Her
Yeah.
adversary is obviously doing something nasty to her, and she can't get it straightened out.
The widow has an adversary who is, doing something unjust or wicked toward her. Common thing for widows would be like the Pharisees used to take advantage of the widows. They have no protectors, and Jesus called them out for devouring widows' properties. They'd find ways of finagling. And you see that even today. It's like you see, widows are often the target of so much corruption, and so a lot of these guys who are these telemarketer types. They call in from other countries, and they're hoping they get somebody, particularly who is really vulnerable, maybe especially if they have Alzheimer's or some kind of deficiency, and they can find a way to get money off of them. It's scandalous.
Like Kim Cummings' mom.
Yeah. Yeah. And so she's vulnerable, this widow, and she has no defender. There's no one, and she has an adversary is seeking her harm. So that's the setup of the two. We'll call this the setup of the parable. So what happens next? Now the action. So here's what are we told happens? We'll call this the action, which is the widow has this adversary who's doing something wicked. The judge neither fears God. And so what is the widow doing, as we're told?
She keeps coming back.
The widow keeps coming back. And saying, give me justice. The judge, what's his response to her?
Oh,
Stop bugging me.
The judge refuses,
go away.
but then what? And this is sort of, and refuses continually, you could even say. But the conclusion is,
He
what
relents.
happens?
He relents, so she'll just go away.
The
stop
judge
bothering him.
relents and gives her justice. He actually does the right thing. Why does he do it?
Because he doesn't want to be bothered any longer. She's worn him down. So he
Yeah.
does the right thing, but
Not for the right reason.
yet for the wrong reason, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, so the great story is that he says, why? Not because I fear God, because I don't, and not because I respect men, that I
Because he-
have any respect for this widow. I don't. Only because she's wearing me out. She's beating me down by her continual coming. Only because she won't give up. And she's wearing me down, basically. Okay. So there's a lesson. By the way, it's a great application. I always tell people when you're dealing with the government, if you're dealing with in any capacity, you have to make it harder for them to say no than to say yes. Because they're going to do, you go in there with the assumption that the government does not fear God and does not respect men, and therefore they only care about what's easiest for them. And so if it's easier to say no, they're going to say no. If it's easier to say yes, they're going to say yes. So you make it really hard for them to say no. So you do like the widow, you keep nagging them and after them. That's how you actually get things done with the government. It doesn't work for businesses, it doesn't work for family, but for the government, it actually that's the way to do it. It works there for them. So, but notice now Jesus says there's a lesson in this for us, isn't there? And so what's the lesson?
Don't give up.
Don't give up, right?
Be persistent
Yeah.
and
So
continue to pray.
and here's the lesson of the great, if a wicked judge who cares nothing for this widow will give her justice because she doesn't give up. Doesn't stop praying, if you will. Because that's what she's doing. She's asking for justice. She's praying to him. She's asking him, help me. She doesn't stop asking. How much more will God, who is righteous and who cares about you, give you justice and do it speedily? And by speedily, doesn't necessarily mean people say, what does that mean? Does that mean he immediately does it? No, but the idea is that God has a time for everything and a purpose for everything. And so every amount of suffering and oppression is serving a purpose, and it will not go on 1 second longer than necessary, if that makes sense. But that's why it's keep praying. If that persistent prayer can move a wicked judge who hates you to do justice for you, how much more effective is that to move the heart of God, who does righteousness and cares about you? And it's a great lesson in calling us to don't give up, don't be discouraged. If you don't get an answer right away, think like the persistent widow. Keep pleading, keep coming for justice. And so even as we think about, again, what we're talking about today in our prayer time as well, praying for the nation of Iran right now and the injustice that's happening to these people under this wicked regime, keep praying for them. Do not let up. Do not relent. There are brothers and sisters. Or Nigeria and the Christians that are being slaughtered by the Muslims in Nigeria right now. Pray for them, for justice for them, and don't forget about them. Keep crying out. Be the persistent widow. Cry out for them to the Lord. And sometimes I think he holds off on answering until more and more people are crying out to him, so that more and more people can see his deliverance and his hand in this and rejoice in it. So persist in this. Don't give up on that. Will he delay? So that's the parable of the
Pastor,
persistent widow. Yeah.
sometimes I find that he keeps throwing the same things at me until I get what he wants me to understand. I find him going around the same circle until it finally dying and I get it, and then it
Yeah.
stops.
That sounds good, right? That sounds like a loving father to teach us some lessons and to bring suffering and pain into our lives until we kind of understand and get it. Yeah, absolutely. And again, this persistent widow, this is not a lesson in you know, if you want that new car, if you want to have success and health and wealth and prosperity in this life, you got to be like the persistent widow and nag God until he gives you the health and wealth and prosperity. That's not what this is about, is it? This is
No.
specifically, it's prayers for justice, prayers for the elect, for God's people who are in oppressive, unjust situations, to praying for their deliverance, praying for their needs, for their strength, but not, again, I would say, not losing heart in this. Always pray, don't lose heart, because it is easy to lose heart and be overwhelmed. And how, you know, just imagine yourself being in a Christian in Iran, and to realize that, you know, you have there's a death over your head if you're found out. It's an underground church for a reason. And the mullahs, if they find you, and so what hope do we have? 47 years we've been under this oppression. 47 years we've been dealing with this. And it just feels like there's just no hope, and we're just forgotten. It's easy to lose heart. And it's easy from our end to lose heart too for them, and just say, I'll just forget about it, just give up. It's like, no, do not. Keep praying.
You know, what I think it's important to know in terms of Iran, there's no small number of people that side with the regime too. I mean, look at when the regime guys give some kind of a spiel, they have a huge crowd out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's not like it's all the people and just a few of the slugs.
Yeah, you're right. It's like, but it just takes some. But the regime is these mullahs who are so. They have the wealth, they have the control, they have the guns, and they have the devotion of their soldiers under them, living out of fear or whatever it is. But you know, I'm reading a really interesting book called Sword and Scimitar, about sort of the history of the Crusades, and the Muslim mentality. Remember in the book, in the 630s, when they first started to really press in and try to take over what was then the Byzantine Empire, and they are the Romans are approaching them, and they're telling them, you need to go. We have go back to Arabia. You can keep the plunder you've taken so far, but you need to go back. And they were like, you don't understand. We've tasted Roman blood, and it's the sweetest blood. We can't get enough of it. And they said, and for us, to die is gain, and to live is abominable. For them, it's like their life is miserable. And so they're like, but for us, it's like, if we die in jihad, we go to paradise, right? We get our virgins, and we get to indulge ourselves in paradise. And so they are so committed to that. They're not afraid of death. That's why most other nations would have given up so much sooner, but it's like it's a death cult. They can't, you know. And so anyway,
And they're
the
spread
oppression is
out
so
all
great.
over the world. Our friends just got back from Europe, and she said a lot of Europe is over.
Oh, it's bad. It's bad. And they really are convinced that Islam is destined to take over the world, and so this is the main point of oppression right now we're seeing for believers, and we got to be praying for them. And you know, we haven't had to face it here as much, but over there it's tough. It's brutal. So he concludes with the last question, though. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? What do you think he means by that?
When he returns, he's going to find people who stop praying for the justice for his elect.
Yeah.
They gave up, even though books like Revelation, you know, people, the elect crying from under the altar, you know, how much longer?
Yeah.
We see these
Yeah.
passages, but I guess we forget about them.
Yeah. I think this is a good word about faith. Faith perseveres. It doesn't give up. And so the question is, when he does come, will he find faith? Will there be this kind of a perseverance? Like this widow is the example of what faith looks like. She's helpless. Why does she keep going to the judge? Because she has no place else to go. She has no other alternatives. And she realized that she has no defenders. There's no one who can take up her cause. He's the only one. And I will wear him out because I have no place else. And she probably has nothing else to do. There's no other place to go. That's why widows can be so powerful. It's like she's not working the fields 40 hours a week. This is all she has. This is her whole life. She's fully committed to this, and she has to get this. And she said, that's what faith looks like. She said, no place else to go. God, if you don't deliver us, we have no hope. If you don't come through for us, and we come to that place of desperation that gives us the perseverance because we have no place else to turn. So that's what faith looks like. It's a great picture of it for us. It's a good lesson for us to take to heart. All right. Shall we continue here? Let's take another parable here. Jack, you want to get this one for us? 9 to 14.
He also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and treated others with contempt. 2 men went up into the temple to pray, and one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, prayed, "Thus, God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get." But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even flip up his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, "God, be merciful to me, a sinner." I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted.
Yeah.
I've
All
always
right.
loved that story.
It's a good one. Yeah. So the last parable, he told them a parable that's them being the disciples. He speaks to his disciples there about the fact that they ought to pray and not lose heart. That was a parable for them, a lesson for them to take to heart. This parable now is told to a different audience here. To whom is this parable told?
To those who trusted themselves, that they were righteous.
Yeah.
And better than others. They treated others with contempt.
Yeah, this is a parable for the self-righteous, those who trust in themselves and treat others with contempt. That's really the definition of self-righteousness. They trust in themselves that they were righteous, so they believe themselves to be righteous, and they treated others with contempt. Interesting. These go together. Faith and love go together. This is not faith. It's a trusting in themselves. Faith is trusting in Christ, trusting in God, trusting in another to deliver you. This is trusting and believing in yourself, which is a pride, a self-righteousness, and it always leads to, it's always paired with the treating others with contempt. Why is that the case, by the way? Why is it that people that consider themselves righteous treat others with contempt?
They just feel that they're better than them, and they know more. And obviously, if I know more, this person knows less.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Really, and part of it is like it's necessary because there's no way that you can ever think yourself righteous unless you can find others less righteous than you that you can stand above. It's like, how do I know? Like, here's an example. Like, if in one class, I'm a star student, I'm the best student in the class, I'm an A+ student, right? But I'm in the lower class, and so I feel great about myself as I look down with others in contempt. But put me in the honors class where I'm just average or maybe even below average, suddenly I don't feel so smart, even though I'm just as smart as I was in the other class, but I feel smarter because I'm around dumber people, so I feel smarter. But put me in a class with smarter people, I feel dumb now. So it is with those who trust themselves, as they, when you're surrounded by people that you look down upon, that's how you feed your righteousness, isn't it? That's how we feel better about ourselves. I remember there was it's kind of a silly story, but when I was in high school, there was a girl who had all these friends, and she specifically chose homely looking girls to hang around with because they made her look better, she said. And she was so nasty. She even told them that kind of thing, hanging out with you. Because, it's why it's one of the benefits of going to nursing homes. I feel so young when I go to a nursing home, right? So they trust themselves, they're righteous, and they treat others with contempt. And who specifically does he have in mind? Who are these people in his time that are like this way?
The Pharisees.
Yeah, these are the Pharisees. So let's learn about this parable. He tells them another parable here about them. So what's the setup?
So he's still speaking to his disciples, even though he's speaking about the Pharisees.
Well, it says here he told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous. Maybe they're his disciples who are feeling this way about themselves.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, he's probably speaking to the Pharisees.
Yeah, the first parable was a parable of encouragement. This is a parable of rebuke, and it could be that some of his disciples are feeling self-righteous, and you can imagine that would be the case. I mean, like, we're following the Messiah, we're following Jesus, and you're not. So, it's amazing how easy it is to become self-righteous. It's so natural to us. It's so natural.
That's true. So yeah, that's a good point, though, because this could speak about strong Christians who are having the fallen side of them tweaked.
Yeah. And that Luke, when he writes it, doesn't specifically say he told it to the Pharisees. He told it to those who trust themselves, which could be anybody. But the example is certainly of a Pharisee. So let's take a look at this. So 2 men went up into the temple. Let's see. 2 men went into the temple
to pray.
Which is an interesting setup. That wouldn't be the case, that people would go into the temple, but I'm assuming the temple would be not the temple itself, but probably the temple courts.
What does that Bible say?
To pray, because only the priests were allowed in the temple. Tax collectors certainly wouldn't be allowed to go into the temple itself, but they go to the temple to pray. The 2 people that are mentioned are, one is what?
Pharisee and a tax collector.
Okay, a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. Why did he choose those 2 characters? Why a Pharisee? Why a tax collector?
Good representatives for the 2 sides.
Yeah, who were the Pharisees at that
Michael,
time?
can I just go back for a second to your last point? That
Yeah.
they would not both be in the temple at the same time? It says the tax collector was standing far off.
Yeah, so I would just say that neither of them, when he talks about they went into the temple, I think he means the temple complex, not the temple itself. That would be only for the priests to go in there. But yeah, so they would come to the temple courts, and the Pharisees, the Jews could really get close. They would come to the inner courts. The Gentiles would be in the outer courts. The tax collector's probably not even going into the inner courts. He might feel like, I'm just like a Gentile, I got to stay away, kind of thing. But either case, that's going to be an important point in a second. But tell me about the Pharisee and the tax collector. Who are these? To the Jews at that time, how did they look at the Pharisees? How did they look at the tax collectors?
They looked up to the Pharisee and down at the tax collector.
Yeah. Do you know what what Pharisee means, the name itself?
Separated one.
Yeah, these are the separated ones.
Oh.
The holy ones, if you will. They were the righteous. Paul talks about himself that way, as to the law, blameless. I'm a Pharisee of Pharisees. He was just the righteous, the blameless. I mean, just vigorous when it came to the law, as righteous as you get. We'll call it the height of righteousness, if you will. at least in the eyes of the people. The Pharisees were fully devoted. It's like seeing, you know, the nuns, the priests, and with the collars, the robes, just this picture of just holiness and separate from the corruption of this world. They're in their monasteries, they're in their conclaves, they're just separate and holy.
I think it's important to know when they showed up, because that's part of their history. They show up after the exile when they come back, and their whole point was that we're going to help the people not screw up again and get them into exile in the first place. So they had this notion of showing the righteous way.
Yeah, and the thing was that I don't want to, you know, there's always hypocrites in every movement. As a movement, it was a good thing. I mean, they were calling people back to the law
Right.
of Moses, back to faithfulness, to repentance. That's why they fasted twice a week, and they were so strict. They really wanted to bring the people back to the law. The trouble is it was all surface stuff. It kind of evolved into this corrupt state. It's kind of like the fundamentalist movement that, you know, everyone despises nowadays. But when it started, it was battling to bring our nation back, bring the church back to the Bible and away from this liberalism that was leading people astray, and all these corrupt and depraved clergy people who didn't even believe in God and didn't believe the gospel and are taking over the churches and teaching, you know, evolution, and teaching the people to not believe anything in this Bible, all the miracles. And these fundamentalists are saying this is so wrong, and they're calling people back to the fundamentals of the faith. And it started out great, but the movement, because it's being led by sinful men, as every movement does, you know, becomes perverse and becomes using the fundamentals to control people. Now, fundamentalists, when you think of a fundamentalist, you're not thinking of a righteous man standing for truth. You're thinking of someone who's trying to control your life, which is what it became. That's what the Pharisees became. They started off as a righteous movement seeking to restore the truth, and evolved into something where a political movement where they're trying to control the lives of people. But in any case, they are still honored and respected. They are the height of righteousness. The tax collector. What did people think of the tax? Who were the tax collectors? What did the people think of them?
Jews that were betraying their own people, pumping up the tax, take a hit, a cut of it for themselves, and that kind of stuff.
Were all the tax collectors Jews?
No. I think the way they would do it would be Rome would collect taxes from all the peoples, and so they would hire people from the communities. People would become tax collectors for their communities, and the Romans would give them soldiers and the power to collect the taxes, but they were sort of local people. So that's why it was. So yeah, among the Jews, it would probably be Jews collecting the taxes from them. In other places, it would be other people from those communities to do it. So, but yeah, they were extortionists, traitors. They were just despised. Really, the depth of depravity. That's why it's always tax collectors and sinners, tax collectors and prostitutes. It's always like tax collectors. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. We kind of still, even though it's still even though tax collector is technically a noble profession, it's still despised. No one likes to see a tax collector. We don't want to deal with that.
It's amazing that all the evil movements in these days find people amongst the people they're abusing to go along with them. You know, in the Nazi POW camps, they had Jews. The Nazis found Jews to help and point out Jews who were doing whatever. Talk about saving your own neck at the expense of people.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah, it absolutely is awful. And it's just, you reflect upon those scenes and you're like, that's, how many times do we have to see this whole idea of trusting in yourself for your righteousness is such a farce. How every one of us is so depraved and so easily falling into this kind of depravity. This it's not like we're cut from a different cloth and we're better than these other people. It's like we're all in that boat. This kind of depravity runs through every ethnicity, every stream, every culture. It's just there. So that's the setup here. We have these two going into the temple. And what are we told? Now we look at the prayers of the men. Let me pull this down. I want to be able to see it all together. Let's see, insert break here. Okay. All right. So now we have the prayer. The prayers. So first we'll talk about the Pharisee. How does he pray? He makes some notes about him.
Thank you for making me better than the others, basically.
Yeah.
Thank you for not making me like them.
Yeah. So, but even before that, what does he say about how he prays? Before he say, what does he pray? How does he do it?
I thank you that I am not like other men.
Yeah. Before he even speaks, what's the first thing it says about the Pharisees?
He stands by himself.
Standing by himself. He stands by himself here. And he prays thus, because that's going to contrast it with the tax collector here. So there's a boldness in this Pharisee. He's approaching, standing by himself here before the Lord. And he gives a beautiful prayer of thanksgiving, right? So he thanks God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, that what? I am not like other men.
Yeah, he's better than the others. He's not like others.
Yeah. I'm not an extortioner.
Not unjust. I'm not
Not unjust.
adulterer, and I'm not like this tax collector.
Or even like this not like this tax collector. Furthermore, so first he just thanks him for what he's not, and then he thanks him for what he does. What does he do?
He fasts twice a week.
Yeah.
And he gives tithes.
I fast twice a week and tithe of all I get. Now, here's a question for you. Is what he's saying true?
Yeah, it could be.
How would we know that?
These are heart issues.
I think so. I mean, it's true. He's not like other men. You can assume he's not an extortioner, and there were Pharisees who were extortioners, but we can look at this guy and say he's probably telling the truth. He's probably a fair guy. I like to think that I could say this, except for the fasting twice a week. I could say this, that I'm not an extortioner. I'm not unjust. I've never cheated on my wife. I'm not like that miserable tax collector. I could say that about myself, and I give tithes of all I get. Sure, I don't fast twice a week, but if I wanted to, I could do that too. There's nothing, these are all that he's saying. We can assume, like the rich young ruler, we could assume that what he's saying is true about himself. That he really sees this. And so he stands before God just giving him thanks. You'll notice the only part that's actually false, and he's not lying, he's just not understanding. There's one line in there that we can say is absolutely false, that he's deceiving himself. And that is the very first thing he says, that I'm not like other men. That somehow he is, in one sense, yeah, outwardly it looks that way, but really inwardly he is like other men. So I've heard it said this way: the problem with the racist is not that he's wrong about the things he says about these other cultures. When he calls out their wickedness, their laziness, their cheating, their this or their that or their this, he's absolutely right in the things he says about these other cultures and peoples. The problem is he doesn't believe it about himself. That's the problem. So he's absolutely right about the sins of other men. The problem is he doesn't see, he's deceived. He doesn't see the sin in himself. And so that's the problem with the Pharisee, is like he's correct, these extortioners and just adulterers and this tax collector, but he's not right in thinking that he's not like them. He's only looking at his behaviors, as you can see, and not at his heart. But so he's standing there, and you're like, okay, very thankful to God. There's nothing to confess. He's thankful to God for that. And he stands there by himself, separate from other men, by himself, apart, holy and righteous. The tax collector, what are we told about him?
Just one more thing. Christ would later tell what's in between the lines of the commands, because this Pharisee says he's not an adulterer, but we know what Christ said about adultery.
Yeah.
And if that be true, and it is, then everyone's an adulterer.
Of course. Yeah.
So just a thought when he said,
Yeah,
I'm not
no.
an adulterer.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And absolutely right. And the thing is, even in the law, there is that most of the commandments can be enforced. There's only one commandment in the 10 Commandments that you cannot enforce.
Coveting?
Do not covet. The very last commandment. Everything else can be observed and can be disciplined and enforced, punished. But do not covet. It's like, that's an attitude of the heart. It's something you can't
Well,
measure.
I can say the same thing about adultery. How do you
can enforce
that?
adultery. They did that. They stoned the people, didn't they?
Yes,
Yes.
but I'm talking about the extended definition of adultery.
Usually the women.
Well, isn't that what adultery of the heart is? Coveting, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's true.
You know?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So,
okay.
So that covetousness really it's the last commandment, but it's the seed of every other commandment. It always begins in the heart with that coveting and desiring that which is not yours. So I steal but I first covet before I steal.
Right.
It moves us in that way. So the tax collector here, what is it said about him? Unlike the Pharisee, how does he approach? He doesn't stand by himself. What does it say about his posture?
He stood some distance away.
Yeah.
He does not look up into the heavens.
Stands far off,
Uh,
would not even lift his eyes.
Now, Pastor, is that a negative, or is that in some cultures that's respect, not to look them in the eye? Or, in the days of kings and queens, you couldn't look them in the eye. You were not good enough to do that.
Yeah, and keep going. He beat his breast too. So, no, but in the Bible, lifting up your eyes to God is totally appropriate. Lifting up your eyes, but he doesn't lift his eyes. He beats his breasts. He beats his breast. Because why? Why does he do that? Why doesn't he? It's not about respect.
Sounds like he's in distress.
It is distress. Yeah. It's shame, it's distress. It's his sense of his own unworthiness. It's a clear he is, unlike the Pharisee, is keenly aware of his sin and unworthiness.
and he's asking for God's mercy.
Yeah. And so his prayer is, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. That's his prayer. Unlike the Pharisee, who's got nothing to confess, just thanking God that he's so much better than everyone else, the tax collector doesn't even approach near. He just stands far off. He's still he's calling on God. It's an act of faith. He's approaching him, but he's so aware of his sin and unworthiness. All he can ask for is mercy. I'm a sinner. I'm a
And
sinner.
is that why he's not lifting his eyes? He's not worthy,
Yeah,
ashamed of himself?
he's ashamed. Yeah, he's full of shame and just
Mm.
and there are moments in your life, when you feel that. When I remember there are keen moments in my life where I'm just so ashamed of myself and for the way I behaved and the things I've done. I'm so keenly aware of my sin, and I'm just like where I'm weeping. I don't want to lift my head. I'm just like, God have mercy on me, a sinner. I totally get it. Um, and then there are times when I'm proud of myself. I'm like the Pharisee. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing good. Um, so it's this situation. So they're approaching the temple here. The Pharisees coming, and the tax collectors coming. Now, the conclusion of it, the matter, is what? The conclusion, and it's a shocking conclusion. What's the conclusion, verse 14?
He went away justified. The Pharisee didn't.
Yeah, this man, that is the tax collector, went home justified. What does it mean when he says he went home justified? What does it
Just
mean?
as if you never did it.
Yeah. He is declared righteous by God. Even though he's condemned by the Pharisee, he is declared righteous by God. The Pharisee
Oh, sorry.
was not justified. So he is not declared righteous by God, not righteous before God. Though he has declared himself righteous, though probably the peoples and his friends declared him righteous, maybe even the tax collector declared him righteous, God did not declare him righteous. And Jesus says at the end, what is the conclusion of the matter? If you want to be justified before God, if you want God to declare you righteous, no matter what anybody else says, what does he say?
Humble yourself.
Yeah. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. For this many times.
Mm.
So he say, exalt yourself, and God will humble you. Humble yourself, and God will exalt you. God opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. And that's something to remember. So this, by the way, is this is why this is pride, which is the way they call it, the queen of vices. I think it is the worst of all the vices. It's the devil's vice, if you will. Everything the Pharisee did. This is why Jesus called them, the Pharisees, the children of the devil, because the devil at his heart is a Pharisee, self-righteous, trusting in himself, treating others with contempt. And what drives his, there's no love in this Pharisee. You'll notice again with the fact there's no faith and there's no love. He has no faith because he's trusting in himself. And so he's not asking God for anything. Did you notice that? He doesn't ask anything of God. He doesn't need anything from God. In fact, he's the one doing things for God, isn't it? Right? He fasts and he gives tithes of all that he gets. So if anybody's giving, he's the one giving to God. And meanwhile, and therefore that leads him to this contempt for other people. Look how he looks at other people. I'm not like other men. And this miserable tax collector accusing him, even that moment. There's no love, there's no faith, and therefore there's no love. Meanwhile, the tax collector, this is again what faith looks like. We saw the faith of the persistent widow. Now we have the faith of this tax collector. When he humbles himself, he is looking to God for mercy. He's the only one asking God for anything here. He's not bringing anything to God. What is it? Nothing in my what is it? Is it Rock of Ages?
Nothing in my hand I bring, simply
Yeah.
to the cross I cling.
Exactly right. Right. Nothing in my hand I bring. Simply to your cross I cling. That's faith. Humbling yourself and coming away justified before God, which is what they're both seeking. But God does not declare the righteous Pharisee righteous. And he declares the sinful tax collector righteous, which is a lesson for us.
It's pretty obvious that God doesn't exactly is not impressed with the person who does not recognize his bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
The tax collector realizes that he is utterly bankrupt and worthy of a smackdown, big time.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's interesting about people who are this tax collector walking away justified. It's beautiful because I guarantee you can see it already, even though nothing's mentioned about it, that his faith will translate into love for others. He will not look down on anybody because he sees himself, like Paul, the worst of sinners. I'm the worst of sinners. And so he looks down on no one. And he has received mercy, and you guarantee you he will be merciful to others and gracious and kind.
I guess Paul moved from one of these from the first to the second in his life.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, when he's a Pharisee, he's killing people, right? And then when he's humbled and he's broken and he becomes the beggar, he becomes a man of true love. It's just great.
The last person you think Jesus would pick is the exact person he picked.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So again, notice these both stories, they do have this in common. They are examples of faith for us. And he picks a widow, a persistent widow, and a tax collector, just two people we do not admire, that we do not look to for inspiration. And he says, that's what faith looks like. You have no place else to go. You're crying out to God, and he is merciful. But God's mercy is glorified in them, which is why he rewards this kind of faith. So
I've been very convicted here, Pastor. For so long I've prayed, thank you, God, that I'm not like Jack. I'm really convicted.
yes,
You are a Pharisee, Rob.
There you go. So, all right, we'll stop recording on that note here. So.